Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
Edit. My sister arrived. She wants to take me to the police station now. I haven't spoken to my boyfriend yet, but I think there's more to this story than he knew about. I'll have to log off for a while. Thank you for the support in the comments. Second edit at the end. I am trembling and just created this alt account because my main has a lot of details about me that would make it easy to track back. A week ago, my boyfriend told me that he had a camping trip planned with his friends on Friday, today. He said he would have no service and he'll see me on Sunday. He messaged me at 5 a.m. this morning and told me they are hitting the road. Around 8, I went for a run like I usually do on Fridays. I have one headphone in while I do because I was on a work call. While I was running, I noticed an SUV that kept popping up. In hindsight, it looked just like my boyfriend's childhood friend's car. I sent a message to my sister saying to stand by and shared my location. Right after sending the message, I looked up and the SUV was right beside me and someone jumped out and grabbed me. It happened so fast, I even dropped my phone on the pavement. I was pulled into this car and I could tell there were at least 2 masked guys in the back before they covered my eyes. In hindsight, they had cartoonish ski masks and black gloves on. I freaked out and resisted like crazy, screaming and kicking. All I could hear was these guys laughing, and I could feel one of them holding me down by the arms behind me, and the other guy was holding my legs down at my knees. I don't know how long I was in there, but I keep begging them to let me go and crying. I even admit I peed on myself, but I don't think they noticed until we arrived at the house. They pulled me out of the car and I was screaming for help until I was pulled into a house. When the mask on my head was removed, I was on my knees in front of my boyfriend of 2 years. He was staring at me with a confused look before he started to angrily ask his friends what was going on. As I started to adjust to what was going on, I realized he was dressed nice and there was romantic decorations around the entryway to his house. I realized who he was and what was going on and I collapsed into sobs. I probably had a 5-minute panic attack in that car on my way there, and another one sitting in the entryway to his house. I was sweaty, wearing soiled yoga pants, flushed with fear, scared for my life. That was all about an hour or 2 ago. My boyfriend took me upstairs and was going to help me get showered and changed, but I wanted to do that alone. I heard yelling and commotion downstairs while I showered, but I don't know what was going on. I'm sitting in his room now holding my shattered phone after crying to my sister about what happened. She lives 1.5 hours away but is speeding over to get me now. I can't stop thinking about what happened, and even though I know now I was never in any danger, I don't think my brain can comprehend it. They were snickering and teasing me in deepened voices about what they were going to do to me. The one that was holding my legs down kept caressing my thighs up and down into the inner area. When the car would brake, his face kept falling into my chest. I don't even know who that was. I just know one of them sounded unsure and kept trying to defuse the situation. But I think it was the driver. Edit 2. I'm working with police now. This is going to be investigated as a false imprisonment if I press charges. My sense of time was so warped. From where I was picked up to his house was about 7 to 10 minutes in the car. It felt like way longer than that. As for the friends, the driver was his childhood best friend, who I actually get along with well. He was in tears when he voluntarily arrived at the police station for a statement. The other two were friends from his athletics class that he started attending just a few months ago. It seems like the two guys I didn't know wanted in on what otherwise was supposed to be something more innocent. The original plan was for them to pop out of this car in their funny kidnapping attire and hand me a letter that explained I was being summoned by my boyfriend, and resistance is futile. Seems like the plan changed as the two new friends wanted to shake me up a bit more and make it feel more real. Edit 3. I've had time to calm down and long talks with my sister. We are going to meet up with my ex-boyfriend for dinner tonight. He has been respectful of my request for space, but has been emotional whenever he thinks about what I went through this morning. His best friend contacted me, repeatedly apologizing for allowing it to get that far, but I asked for him to stop, and he did. The best friend's fiance reached out and has been supportive and apologetic too. I am astounded at the support I've received here and wish I could thank each of you individually. I've never had anyone other than my sister and boyfriend care for my mental well-being like this. Reddit is a very kind place sometimes. My mother was stationed at Kadena Air Force Base around the late 2010s, and being a military child at the age of 12, my life had reset once again. I didn't have friends again, and I had to learn an entire new neighborhood. I didn't really have anything that made me ecstatic. That is, except the Pokemon League held on base. It was ran by a few people who earned their judge cards from Nintendo and held tournaments and just open game nights. It was really fun picking up the card game, playing in the video game. They even had a small gym and Elite Four system. The judge in question, who we will call Professor Getsu, for the sake of anonymity, was a nice dude. He was the youngest of the three, and wore a white professor getup. He looked maybe on the edge of his teens, early 20s, with dark hair and glasses, and a skinny frame. He was extremely helpful to newcomers, sort of like the big brother we could all look up to and strive to beat in our children's cars and video games. Even if his game name of Getsu was a bit nerdy, even for me. He was always one of the last people to leave, helping to clean up, and he supposedly lived nearby. This last thing is important for what's about to happen. It was a bit of a colder night when the event ended. I was sitting outside in the parking lot, scrolling through memes my friends texted me as I waited for my parents to arrive to pick me up. I was just kind of zoning out as the time clicked by when I heard someone nearby. Hey girlie, you play Pokemon? I would look up at some really big dude, kind of chubby looking. I saw him every now and then in the events, and he didn't really stand out too much. I gave a small nod, said, yeah, I do, as he gives this wide smile, like creepy wide. He starts walking forward, and I'm hit with this nasty stench, like a bad body odor. I blink a bit as I see he's walking from a black sedan with its back door open. I got this cool card collection. Come here, let me show you. Now, my parents have always taught me stranger danger, but my kid brain thought, hey, he went to events and I saw him, so he should be fine. At least, so I thought. Until he grabbed my wrist and started to drag me to the sedan. To say I immediately started screaming is an understatement. Stinky didn't care though. He was still dragging me, saying how I will have fun and throwing out things about trading cards. Like someone listening would think that he was dealing with a whiny kid. I honestly thought I was going to be taken and I would never see my mom and dad again. That I would be on the back of a milk carton and never seen again. Silly, I know, but I was rather sheltered about dying and death at that time. Thankfully, Professor Getsu had walked out at that very moment, presumably on his way to walk home. All I know is I hear the sound of fabric hitting this dude's face as Professor had swung his professor coat right into the dude's face. I feel his hand go to where the dude's grabbing my arm, and I see his hand grab Stinky's pinky finger and yank back. Hard. Stinky let go and yowled like an animal as Professor pushed me back behind him as he yanked his coat off the dude. He then kicked at the back of the dude's knees as he caused him to buckle, as Professor grabbed his wrists and pulled them back. Stinky groaned in even more pain as Professor looked at him with just a cold look in his eyes. The big brother figure was gone, and something else in its place, and I think I was a bit scared of it. Professor's tone of voice when he spoke up didn't help either, like icy daggers lingered in his words against Stinky. If I see you back here, or doing this shit to my charges, this will pale in comparison to what Japanese prisons will do to you. Stinky would scramble away and get into his car and peel out of the parking lot. Professor glaring at him till he was out of sight. He would then guide me inside of the venue, buy me some fish and chips, and sit down with me until my parents arrived. That cold persona he had when he kicked that dude was gone, back to being the big brother I knew. To be frank, that frightened me. I didn't quite understand why the teenager was so aggro. I only later learned that Professor Getsu was a black belt who taught kids how to defend themselves with his mother at the local activity center. I suspect he had something of a protective persona or something in his life that led him to act in such a way. He explained the situation to my folks when they arrived. I wasn't allowed to go to the events and leagues as much as I used to, but did from time to time. Professor Getsu was still his normal self at the events and helping people. But he would stop coming to events a year afterwards. His license having expired, and his father moving out of the country soon. Reaching about the same age as he was, and with a little sibling of my own, I sympathize with how, for a brief moment, he became something terrifying just to make sure I was safe. Oh, and as for Stinky, he never showed up to events, and he was either banned or just scared of Professor Getsu. I wish the professor a good life, and I hope he is doing well. As for Stinky, I wish that we never meet, ever, again. I have been clean from all drugs since 2019. It took me a while to write this. I never thought I would be posting because of how stupid I was and the stupid mistakes I made. I know, I will get a lot of duh comments on here, so just don't even say it. I already know. I am telling this story to remind people that everyone's intentions are not what they say that they are. I am mentally traumatized from this experience, and I get reminders of it every day. I am grateful to be alive, and I have no idea what would have happened if I didn't get away when I did. So save the rude and cruel comments. Thanks. This story is based in September of 2017, I believe. Such a fucking blur. I did whatever I could to survive in this harsh world, so please, no judgment. I was on the streets, no family, and in active crack, soon to be meth addictions. Backstory. I started using crack in 2015 and figured out that if I sold my body, I could make easy money. I know, not ideal, but I was deep in addiction, and at that point, I didn't care about anything. But in January 2017, I met Ty, who also smoked crack, but worked every day, so I no longer had to do that. I was going on like 8 months free from selling my body and soul. Also, when I met Ty, he had a place in this big city, and he did a lot of work for people in the city. I was left on the street by the man I thought I had loved at the time. I must have said something wrong because he flipped out and left with everything I owned in his truck. Fuck, we just spent days getting high, and I was sure he was just throwing a fit, so I went over to my friend, let's call him E's, house. It was my home away from home, and I felt safe there. E was an older, maybe 60-year-old man who liked to get high, and over time he became one of my best friends. I was able to take a shower and put on clean clothes. When I was all done, I remember sitting on the couch with disbelief that Ty would leave me like that. I started crying and wishing things had been different, while E held me and comforted me. I knew deep down that I needed a fresh start, to depend on myself and live a happy life. Across the street from E's house was a hometown bar where rappers and musicians would perform, and on that particular night, the bar had been filled with people from the bigger city about half an hour away. Let me explain. Where I come from, there isn't really a place for addicts to go and get clean. They do have a women's shelter, which I had been to before. About 30 minutes away is a bigger city where they have all the help you can ask for, if you are willing to do the work. At this point, I was ready to get away from everyone and everything. I had no hope of cleaning up my life if I stayed anywhere close to where I was using. Remember, you have to remove old playmates, playthings, and playgrounds, so that's what I needed to do. I went right over to that bar and found a semi-good-looking guy heading back to the city I needed to go to. I told him I had planned to go to the shelter in the morning, and he told me I could just go with him, and he will take me in the morning. On the ride, I remember feeling like a whole 100 bricks was lifted off my shoulders. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and an Obama phone with no minutes. I asked the guy I was with that was driving. Had a pretty sweet ride, by the way. I said, "You don't fuck with this, right?" And I pulled out my crack pipe. He shook his head, so I rolled down the window and just let it go. I knew that going into this shelter, I had to get better. Not just for me, but I had kids and a family that at the time still hoped I would get better. I wanted to start over. I just didn't know how hard it was going to be. Me and this random dude go to his friend's house. We smoke a blunt, and I don't remember nothing after that. I woke up on the floor of a clean room. I mean, clean, but there was nothing in it. It smelled like paint as I looked around and realized this was the place dude was talking about moving into and renting. I got up, and he took me to get a coffee and right over to the shelter. I was fucking terrified of what I was walking into. I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was I needed to better my life, and I needed to do it now. As we drove into downtown, I got a little nervous because I knew downtown was full of crime and drug dealers. Big buildings and confusing signs, tons of people and traffic. I then realized I was going to have to work really hard to get my life back. We pulled onto the street, and before I knew it, he was dropping me off. There I was, standing in this big, beautiful, clean lobby, just feeling lost and broken. I had been with Ty for almost 7 months, and this was the first time he left me like this, so I was kind of hurt over that. I knew he had been seeing someone else in our recent month breakup, and he wasn't afraid to show it. It smelled like lime and spotless white walls. I walked up to the desk, and I was asked if I was homeless. Yes, I said, and she didn't even ask any questions. She just looked at me with sad eyes and said, "Okay, hun, let's get you set up." She took me to a small room full of boxes as she handed me one. She explained it was for my personal things, toilets, etc. I looked at her with unsettling eyes and replied that I didn't have any belongings, that I had lost everything the night before. The nice lady gave me some toiletries and a pair of leggings. Next was the intake, where I had to answer a bunch of questions and was handed a paper with all the rules on it, and on top of the paper it stated there was no Wi-Fi in or around the building. You had to go down to the stop sign to get internet. My phone was off, but I could still use Wi-Fi. But at the time, I wasn't really that worried about it. I knew Ty was already probably staying with that other girl. Michelle was her name. So I didn't feel it was necessary to even try to use my phone. I decided to cut off everyone and to try to be different. When she was done giving me the rundown on how things worked, she took me into the day room. Walking from the lobby was weird, and I remembered feeling sick going through the double doors, with stairs off to the left. Under the stairs was a pile of mats. I was told to grab one. I followed her through another set of double doors into the day room, which was huge. It was filled with at least 50 females, a lot of older ladies with nowhere to go, but it was loud and bright. The wall to my left was full of lockers, which I was told I would get one if I stayed there long enough. And in front of the wall was about 10 to 15 round tables set up where most of the girls were sitting playing cards, coloring, and talking. On the other side of that room was the shower/bathroom, and a small TV that sat on a cart with wheels. On it next to the cart was an end table that had an electrical strip full of chargers and phones. In the far back right corner was a door that led outside to go to smoke. It was nice. There was picnic tables and lawn chairs set up with a huge fenced-in yard for the kids to play in. When 7 p.m. hit, the whole dynamic of the rooms changed. Everyone was moving around. People were running in, and then you could hear it over the speaker. "Roll call!" Then we were instructed to go and get one mat to sleep on. They passed out blankets and pillows to those who were without, and they let us keep the TV on. The first night was scary and lonely. Here I was in a strange place, not even 2 full days clean off a week-long crack binge. I was up half of the night with my head just racing. I finally fell asleep when the other girls started to get quiet. The morning came way too fast, and the rule was you had to get up at 7 a.m. You didn't have to leave, but you had to get up. A lot of the older ladies didn't even leave the shelter. They knew they had a place to stay, and had nothing else to do all day, so they hung out together at the shelter all day long. I had to go upstairs for breakfast, which was okay. I'm not really a breakfast food person, but that morning I was starving. I had the whole deal: eggs, bacon, milk. After breakfast, I went out to smoke, and I noticed this tiny black girl with cornrows in her hair had some cards in her back pocket. I had been playing cards since I was a kid. My dad taught me a few games. I played with friends, and I also had done time in jail in the past. I was lonely. I didn't know where anything was, and it was obvious I needed help. I asked her her name, and if she wanted to play cards, and after 2 games, we had a connection. She was cool, and she liked me, so I was okay with that. I can be awkward around new people, and females tend not to like me, so I find it hard sometimes to make friends. She asked me after we played a few more games of Rummy if I wanted to go to McDonald's with her. I was cool with that because I needed to learn the area anyway. On the walk there, as we were talking, something caught my eye, so I looked up. And there he fucking was, Ty, with all of my belongings in his truck, drives right past us. I tried to call, but he ignored me every time. Guess he was done with me for good this time. That crushed me. I wanted to fall to the ground and just sink till I disappeared. But instead, I had about 10 different emotions running through my body all at once. I was so angry that he was just looking for a reason to leave me, since the month before we broke up. And I stayed with my dad for a while. He started seeing this Michelle. I was just absolutely devastated. We continued our walk to McDonald's as I was silent and broken. That night was easier to sleep because I was exhausted from not having any sleep and just feeling done. I slept like a baby, to be honest. The next day, Mish wanted to show me this place she goes to get a good free lunch. The only thing was it was a church and we had to sit through a 30-minute sermon, which was cool with me. We were standing outside waiting on the church to open their doors, and this blackened out Mercedes-Benz with a trailer hauling a badass Harley pulled up and parked in front of the church. I then heard my loudmouth say, "Damn, that's a nice fucking setup." I looked at Mish and then looked back at the Harley. That was when I saw him. I specifically remember everyone knowing who he was. Will is what they called him. I remember getting excited to meet new people and be a part of a new community. Everyone was really nice going into that church. A guy at the door walking in gave us a pamphlet of meal times and services offered. I followed Mish to one of the back pews and slid in behind her. The church was pretty, different colors, and there was a choir singing in a low and almost quiet tone as people around us were taking their seats. I kind of froze when that guy I saw came in. Will sat next to me. I looked at Mish and then I quickly noticed his gold watch. It could have been fake, but it almost looked like a Rolex. He was an older black gentleman, talked real smooth when he introduced himself, with his hand out. I was shocked that he wanted to shake my hand. No one in my life does that. I shook his hand and they were creamy, like he takes very good care of them, and obviously does not work a physically demanding job. He was nice dressed and had this pimp hat on like a fedora. It even had a feather in it. His cologne was strong but smelled good, like a man. He was handsome and smooth. He was also very confident. Sitting through this sermon, I found it hard to pay attention to the preacher. I remember looking at his clean, shiny black leather shoes, and the socks were black and thick. When the service was finally over, people started heading into the dining area. I just followed Mish through, and we got our food. She picked an empty space to eat on one of the end of the long tables full of chairs. Not even 5 minutes, not paying attention to our surroundings, just eating, Will came over and sat 3 seats away from me. He looked at Mish and said, "Do you mind?" I don't know why I didn't see the red flags. Of course I see them now, but looking back, I was so clueless. He hardly said a word the whole time we were eating, and when he was done he got up, threw his stuff away, and I assumed he left. Mish and I decided to go home, play some cards, and go to a clothing bank that she knew about. We were walking home and talking when he pulled up next to us. He rolled down his window and he asked if we needed a ride home, but he was looking at me with a deep stare. I looked back at Mish and she refused. Smart girl. And I went with him. Dumb girl. I think I was more curious than anything. I had to know how he made that kind of money, and I remember wanting that. He drove around till my curfew and just talked. I don't know what it was. I think we had a lot in common and we related a lot. He asked me how I ended up at this shelter and just asking questions, so I told him. I don't know what it was. I'm not sure if I trusted him, But I told him about my past anyway, how I sold my body for drugs, and how horrible it was. And I even said I was glad I didn't do it anymore. He didn't say much about it, and we agreed that we would continue our talk the next day, and he would help me put in a couple applications, and he had some errands too. I woke up in the morning to a text from Will that said, "What if you made that kind of money but spent it on yourself, not drugs? Everything you make will go to you, building your life. Just think about it." I thought about it. I'm not going to say why I agreed and went with the idea that this would work, and I could actually get my life together and my kids back. 200 a half hour. I could be free. I chose to go with him. At that time, I think he thought I wanted to be with him, but really I just wanted a way out of the situation I was in. I hated that stinky, loud shelter. I wanted out. He got a room at the motel, and we dropped off my stuff, and he told me that I needed some new clothes. He did tell that he had just got fired from a trucking company, and he was a truck driver. He was currently trying to find another job as far as I knew. He took me shopping and got me new outfits. More or less outfits to take pictures in to bring the money. I knew what I was getting into, and I was preparing my mind to handle everything that was about to happen. Will did tell me that if I went with him, I had to stay clean, and have a clear mind to make money and be smart. Looking back at how manipulative he was, and made me believe that I would do this to make my life better, I started doing this before I got addicted a few times. I make rent or bills, so I knew I could mentally do it, but I was still unsure about where this was gonna go. We get back to the hotel and I do my thing, take my pictures and post them. It didn't take long before I started to get calls. I did make some money and I kept every penny, and Will took me shopping. I remember the shoes I bought. They were black and gold baby fats. Oh, I loved those shoes. I got like 6 or 7 cute outfits, some makeup and hair dye. Remember, I came to the shelter with nothing, so being able to get all this stuff made me feel so good. I was confident in myself and hopeful that I could get a place and start a new life within a few weeks if days like that repeated itself. Remembering how things went, I am starting to think that was a part of his game. Making girls think they can do it and keep all the money, and then just trap them and make them need you. It's sick. He tricked me. He made me think I could finally live a clean life. Yeah, I was escorting, but I treated it like a job. I bought another phone, so I had a new number and used the Obama phone for work. And turned it off at like 5 p.m. I thought wrong. I later that day went back over to the shelter and grabbed the one shirt I had and some personal things, and I left with Will. That night was cool. He was super chill. We talked in separate beds. We got a 2-bed, and he didn't act like he had an interest in me like that, which I was happy about because I didn't want to be with anyone. I needed a break from emotional attachment. After Ty left me, I felt like I wouldn't trust anyone like that in a long time, so I was happy that I was comfy in a bed, watching TV, freshly showered, with money in my pocket. I had the best night's sleep and woke up to breakfast and time to get up and get myself together. He got up early, went and got us breakfast and coffee. He ate with me and then left. Said he will be back in a couple hours. Take my time and do what I gotta do. So I did just that. While he was gone, I dyed my hair, took a shower, and the works. Not long after I was done and waited for him, the doors opened and a female walks in. She's pale and has a beautiful face, long pretty blonde hair that ran down her shoulders. She was real petite, way too skinny, and a size B chest, pretty big blue eyes that had dark circles under them. It looked like she had been crying, and she was carrying a black trash bag that contained all of her possessions. Will walked in behind her and introduced her as Anna, and she needs some help too. He instructed me to get her together, get her pretty, and take some pictures and post them. He told her to go on and take a shower, and then asked to talk to me outside. We went outside the door, and as I was shutting it, his voice got real stern and said, "I see you have not made any money yet. And why the hell is that?" I tried to explain that Sundays were the slowest days, and I would be lucky to make any money today. Before I could finish, he cut me off and said, "I don't give a fuck. You need to make some fucking money. What do you think this hotel pays for itself? I will pay for half of it tonight, but for now, you pay half and half of all the expenses. Now go make some fucking money." I couldn't even believe he was talking like this. I never seen him so mad, and his voice scared the hell out of me. I looked at him when he cut me off, and I could see him get angry. His eyes got wide, and the whites just disappeared, and they became all black. I was scared, but I did what he said. He then left me alone with her, while he went out and got food and whatever he did. When Anna got out of the shower and her skin was more exposed, as she walked out of the bathroom in a small towel, I knew she was addicted to IV use. I assumed heroin. She confirmed it after I asked her if it was going to be a problem to not do drugs because that was the rule for me. So why wouldn't it be a rule for other girls? After my kid's father passed away from an overdose, I didn't like to surround myself with girls I knew I could get close to. Try to help and something happened, so I cut all that out, and when she told me, I was like, "Okay, no girl, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to make some calls because you can't stay here." At that point, I didn't even care what the fuck Will has to say. I don't want her here, period. As soon as he came through the door, I stopped him and took him outside. I just told him I didn't think I could work with her. I didn't want to be around a heroin addict, or any kind of addict at that matter. He did make her pack her bathroom and clothes up and took her home. I think he was trying to please me for some reason, looking back. Will and I then took a ride to Main Street, where all the girls walk and work. It was so weird. Remember how I said he knew everyone at church? He knew all those girls, business owners, police officers, and other men who drove drug dealer cars. I don't know why I didn't just run then. I'll never know. About an hour or two of driving around talking to a bunch of different girls, this random ass girl jumps in the car. It was crazy. They had known each other for years, I guess, and she had been looking for him and wanted to make some money. She was quite a bit older than me, but still really pretty, like beautiful. She had long, thick, curly, jet black hair. I didn't really get a good look at her until we got back to the hotel. Will told me he wanted to get a few girls together and make some big money. I was always gonna be number one, and I will never post with another female because I am the number one. He told me I was important and that we are building our own family. Amy was tall and thick, but she was gorgeous. Big blue eyes, pretty skin, small waist with a big round butt. And she was a straight up bitch. She took benzos. She was prescribed to them, I guess, so he allowed it. It wasn't long before I couldn't help but watch her. She was popular, and then, like at night, she would be falling out and nodding off. It drove me crazy. I think I even started a fight with Will about it once. I didn't think it was fair, honestly. Like, bitch can get high, but I can't? Fuck you. What Will would do during the day is he would leave me at the hotel to make money, and he took Amy to the street and worked her. Well, it wasn't 2 days before they came home with another girl. Young one, 18. Her choice, no family. I only know what they tell me. Her name was Amanda. She was short like me and a little chunky, which was okay. Guys like chunky too. She had blonde, long hair and a cute face. She was sweet and didn't say much. I tried to get to know her a little better, but she wasn't around for long. I posted her with Amy, and she didn't get much of a feedback. More people were calling for Amy. Amanda stayed with us for a few days before she decided she wanted to go home. Will, Amy, and I didn't stay at that hotel for long. We ended up deep into the city. The farthest away from my hometown. Bigger room, and a little nicer hotel with a view of the whole city. It had a shitty little microwave and a drive-up entrance to your room. Will and Amy brought home 2 girls that night. I don't remember much because I wasn't involved with them. I posted them, and the next few days we had money. Every time a girl would make money, they would give it to Will because he had them believe he was saving it for them and getting them anything that they wanted. I continued to make money on my own, and I also gave him my money. I got suspicious, and I will never forget the moment I knew I was not safe. I was outside smoking a cigarette. I wasn't out there long, but when I came back into the room, Will had all 3 girls posing on the bed as he was coaching them on how to pose and taking snaps of them. I didn't say a word, and I closed the door slowly. I don't know why I felt the way I did, but I just didn't feel right. I don't know if he heard me open the door, but I heard him yell my name, and he said he needed me. He handed me his phone and told me to post the pictures. When I got on the website and tried to post the pictures, it now wanted money instead of posting ads for free. Will unhappily ran to wherever and put money on the card. When I tried to put money on the card, it wouldn't accept it, and said it wanted bitcoins. I informed Will and even showed him the page that it wasn't going to post, and he got furious and yelled at me. He turned and walked out of the room. I looked at everyone else and tried to apologize for his actions and to stay calm, it will be okay. He came right back in with the gun in his hand. I didn't even know he owned a gun. He hit me in the face with it and said I needed to find somewhere to post the ad to do it, or I'm done, and then left. I don't know if he realized he did that in front of 3 other girls, and I didn't know what or I'm done meant either. I was fucking terrified, and that's when I knew I had to find a way to escape. I learned real quick that I wasn't able to just leave anytime I wanted anymore. After Amy got involved, Will changed. He started talking about taking us girls to New York and make big money and travel and go here and there, and that alone scared the hell out of me. I wanted to build a life to get my kids back and not leave the state, to trick or maybe get killed or abandoned. No, fuck that. I got fearful for my life when he hit me with the gun. I have been hit before, punched like a man, but I have never been hit with a gun. That night I had a couple dates set up, and Will knew he had to take the girls and leave. I decided to try to make a plan to get away. The first date I made $200 and put $50 in my purse, and then put $50 in a pocket in a bra hidden away, and I left the rest on the table. The second date I made $150, put half hidden away, and the rest on the table. Will came into the door not long after I was finished and grabbed the money off the table. My purse was sitting right there, and I didn't see him do it, but he took that money out of my purse and said he had to do something and left again. That was when I made my escape. I made 100 calls before I finally reached someone who was willing to help me. He had a friend come and pick me up and bring me to his house. I will never forget the feeling I had when I was running out to the car with a trash bag full of stuff I have collected in the past 3 weeks. I was scared to death that he would come pulling up and see me. That feeling didn't leave me until we hit the highway. I wanted to tell this story because I have never been able to get through telling it. I couldn't help to think where I would be if I stayed, and if I would even be alive. So, Will, let's never meet again. If you have any of your own stories and would like to submit them for narration, please go into the link in the description and submit your stories to the subreddit to see your stories featured here. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.